Oturumumuzun moderatörünü sizlere takdim etmek istiyorum. Creative Industries Styria Genel Müdürü Sayın Eberhard Schrempf'i sahneye davet ediyorum. I would like to invite Mr. Eberhard Schrempf, Managing Director of Creative Industries Styria.
Thank you.
Yes, just a second please. Sevgili konuklar, oturum boyunca Is Design City ve UNESCO City of Design hashtag ile Twitter ve Instagram'da paylaşım yapabilirsiniz. Dear guests, during the panel you can share your post by using Is Design City and UNESCO City of Design hashtag. Şimdi sözü Sayın Eberhard Schrempf'e bırakıyor. Hepinize keyifli bir oturum diliyorum. Now I'm giving Mr. Schrempf floor.
Thank you very much. Welcome this morning to the second day of the panel Design Policy. We were talking yesterday about the why. Why do we need a design policy? Why does a nation need a design policy? Why does a city need a design policy? What are the benefits out of this? And so on. So today we're stepping into the how. How can we create, develop a design policy? And we are talking about what are the benefits for creating this, and how can we develop a national policy, how to convince the relevant politicians, the relevant partners of all the needs. Does it make sense to have this? All the political authorities and partners need to be integrated. That's very important. How to put together a team, how to gather all these people who should be involved in a process like this. How to achieve the greatest possible acceptance of a policy. What condition does a design strategy need to be successfully implemented, etc., etc. And on this how day, we have the experts from yesterday, but we have new experts here on stage, and I'm very proud to present now the presenters for today. They have strictly 10 minutes for a short impulse presentation about this. And we don't want to know all about the success stories. We want to know also about the problems with the establishing with the design policies, what models or what methods are successful. How can we be successful with this? What were the failures, maybe? When did we fail, or do we have stories of failures? What are the obstacles, and so on? Well, 10 minutes presentation for each of these three, and now welcome with me Mr. Luis Gonzalez Arenal from Puebla State Government, Puebla, Mexico. Give him a hand. I will do the introduction later. Now I will call all the speakers. The next one is Mr. Severin Filek. He is the head of Designaustria, based in Vienna. Welcome on the stage, Severin. And give a hand to Michael Thompson. He's from the UK, based in London, runs a company. It's called Design Connect. And the speakers from yesterday, Päivi, Tahkokallio from Finland in Rovaniemi. Welcome, Päivi. Piotr Swiatek, a Polish, with Polish rules, but lives and works in Cardiff in Wales, in the UK. Welcome. And finally, Boštjan, Botas, Kenda from Ljubljana. He is in the University of Arts and Design, the Dean. Well, I want to step into the first topic. We have the 3 presentations, short impulses, 10 minutes each. We start with Luis Gonzalez Arenal. He is the commissioner for design and innovation in the state of Puebla. It's based in the city of Puebla. And he is also a very good partner in the City of Design organization. He is the City of Design face for Puebla. He is working, he's an educated architect with more than 40 years of active architectural practice in Mexico. He is the former president of the Puebla Institute of Architects, life member of the Mexican Institute of Architects and the Mexican Association of Architects, and an international associate member of the American Institute of Architects. And he's currently, as I said, the Innovation and Design Commissioner, and they do fantastic projects, implementing the design on a very wide view, stimulating and running projects to work with design, not only in the city of Puebla, which has about 2 million inhabitants, also in the state of Puebla, which is, he is a very handsome, very successful operator of this. So give him a hand for his presentation. Luis, please, the stage is yours. If you stay here, you can use this microphone, and this is the presenter. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Hello. You can. It's okay. Well, first, very happy to be here. As Eberhard said, it's a very short presentation. It's divided in 3 little chapters for 3 different things that I think could be useful to you. Puebla, as Eberhard mentioned, is the 4th largest city in Mexico. The state is also called Puebla. It's a very balanced city. It's the most important historical downtown of the American continent. It was founded in 1531, and it was founded out of nothing, one of the first Renaissance cities that was planned out of nothing in America. And we have a lot of industry. We have more than 150,000 university students. We are at the 2nd place in tourism in the country, that is cultural tourism. We have very big industry. We have all the Beetles, Volkswagen Beetles were made in Puebla since 60 years ago. We have all the Audi plant, many, many things. And one of the things I want to talk to you about is how my office works. About a little bit more than 2 years ago, about 3 years ago, I talked to the governor and told him that he asked me how I saw government. I have never been in government before. And I told him something that worried me very, very much were isolated efforts. Everybody was working, doing their best, but every one of them were doing it in their trench. Nobody talked too much to each other, and I mean universities to universities, at levels of government, between the government, the private sector, the ONGs. Nobody was talking to each other. The result of that was a lot of wasted effort and wasted talent. And so I told them that there was something that had to be overlooked in that, and that the only way to see these links were like these magical glasses that we have as designers, where we can see the links when we put these magical designer glasses. He was convinced of that, mainly because he likes me very much, So did it this office, and well, he still like me, but he's not a governor anymore. And what I did was that I told him that it shouldn't be in a director level, it shouldn't be in a cabinet as a minister, but it has to be in the highest place where decisions were made. And that would be exactly from his office. It's the only way that people will really notice and really take notice of what you do and all the suggestions. Also, I said it had to be like an opportunity office. I told them that we as designers and creative see things very, very differently and see the possibilities in a different way. And well, after 2 years, he was so convinced that I was always invited to the cabinet meetings because he said we were why not people. In every meeting, I would say, why not doing this? And things had to be done. So I think that even to work, even public policy has to be designed. So I think it's completely transversal. It's a very good time to be a designer and a creative because the role of designers are being recognized in all walks of life. We are everywhere. Most of the disrupted companies had a founder or a co-founder that is a designer. So my office, after what I said, it's had a lot of different projects. We do a lot of design things, competitions, a design month, but we also have things in security. We do lots of things in education, which I think if you don't have education, nothing else will going to work. We do in health, in tourism, everywhere. So right now we have about 40 different projects going on. And we generate new projects all the time. And we mostly use the human resources and the economic resources of other people to do what we do. We really convince them. We have even put 4 or 5 ministers to work in the same project, which is something like historical, at least in my country, but I think it happens very much in every country. So that's the way it works. And I'm going to tell you about a project we are working on with the British Council, which it's very interesting. Puebla coordinates the Mexican creative cities. We have 6 of them. We have in gastronomy, music, digital art, arts and crafts, and design. And we are coordinating a program with the British Council that is called the Creative Collective. It's the first time it's been done in the world. And we are doing it in 3 levels. The first one is young creators. We want young creators to know that their ideas can be made money. This is a program that's going to go for 3 years. We took 5 young creators from each of the cities. We even invited 2 more cities that are doing a great job in the creative sector. Then we have another level that are the creative leaders in every city. Also 5 of them in each city that have offices or galleries or whatever in the creative industry that are doing wonderful things already. And this is the tricky part, the 3rd stage, government. When we talk at the British Council, they told me if they should invite like the Minister of Culture. Now, I don't want to invite culture, I want to invite finance and some other people to understand what the creative sector is all about. It's a problem of visibility and understanding the importance of it. In Mexico, it's about 6.3 of the GDP, and the World Bank says 11% of our employment is made by the creative sector. So what we want to do is a ripple effect, and so we invited 2 more cities. So now there are 8 cities working on this program, which are going. We have still a big gap in the north. Just to get an idea, Puebla is about the size of Switzerland. We have a map where we feed about 18 European countries in the map of Mexico, so Mexico is pretty big. And how is my time?
2 minutes.
So this is done so to people to give design visibility. Because we have a big problem in our country, which is we form students in the formal education and they become informal professionals. When you are informal, you are invisible and you cannot help invisible people if you don't know they're there. So you have to talk about it a lot. It's more like a communication problem. And just to end up, we have as a public policy in Mexico very successful tax incentives, where the most important one is for movies. 175 movies were made last year, one of them Roma. This is a program that has been working very well. And we also have the same thing with theater. We have it with dance, music, and visual arts. And I was talking to Päivi yesterday. I don't have the slightest idea how to do the same with design. So all the suggestions are welcome, and thank you very much for giving it that. Thank you.
You have 45 minutes left. 45 seconds. 45 seconds left. Thank you, Luis. I think this is a really nice and good model of doing cross-innovation, cross-sectoral innovation, and to link creativity from this young people, all this informal sector. I've learned in Mexico that about 60% from all Mexicans, the Mexican economy, 60% is informal, which is amazing. So 40% has to create all the taxes, and 60% just is doing something. Oh, sorry, my dog. Well, we will talk about this later in detail in the panel discussion. Next speaker is Severin Filek. Severin is the CEO of Design Austria, which is based in Vienna, and Design Austria is the knowledge center and interest organization of Austria's National Institution for Professional Designers, founded in 1992, the company, Design Austria. But the initiative was founded in 1927. 27. So it's 90 years old experience, which is collected in in Design Austria organization from 1998 to 2000. Severin was the president of the Bureau of European Designers Associations, the BEDA, and has been a board member since. He's an author, he's an expert, he is really one of the European masterminds in design, and he's also the conceptual fathers, one of the conceptual fathers of the BEDA communication series in Brussels and the BEDA European Design Reports. So please give a hand to Severin Filek and listen him for 10 minutes. This is the presenter here. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for the invitation, for being here.
Let's go close.
Okay, you hear me? Yeah. Thank you so much to Istanbul Design Summit. Thank you, Eberhard, for this overwhelming introduction. I'm going to have to.
Here's.
Yeah. Okay. Our topic: design policy. Why and how. We spoke about the why yesterday, and we want to focus a little bit on the how today. How to go about it, how to implement it, and let me share with you some ideas, backgrounds, and thoughts on this topic. Austria itself has no design policy, but I'll tell you a little bit more about the ideas behind that. We all know that design stands for new products, new communication devices, new solutions, new ways of thinking, but also for additional value, for added value through design, and for the integration of functional, emotional, and social utilities. Findings of user-focused solutions when moving from the existing to the preferred. On the same side, we also notice a lot of changes in the last couple of years. We move from competition to collaboration, from cooperation to cooperation, from employment to engagement. And also in the opinions and awarenesses of companies, there is additional value through design, and companies notice slowly but steadily to move from costs to investment. How do we stand, or how does design policy stand internationally? If we look at China, they want to become the leader of the innovation society. If we look at South Korea, they publish one 5-year plan after the other for design. 1 year later, the European Design Leadership Board, an institution which was put into life from the European Commission at that time, published a report, Design for Growth and Prosperity. And this report included 21 recommendations for design in society, in economy, and in policy. So what are the next steps in order to create a design policy or to implement it? First of all, I believe that we don't have to reinvent the wheel one after the other. We have to spot responsibilities. We heard yesterday the difference between the Ministry of Economy and Ministry of Culture in education, art, design, and everything. So we have to spot these personalities and who has which responsibility. We have to be interdisciplinary. We have to look not only at different authorities and ministries, but also at the different problems which we have to solve in society. Design stands for, the next steps, of course, would be also, and I just wrote down some words here, some keynotes for us for the discussion. We have to take into consideration the fact of competitiveness. Design is the key factor, connecting research and development with innovation, enabling the market implementation of new knowledge and its fundamental growth and boosting GDP. We have to look for internationalization. Investing in design has helped many companies, especially European companies, to open up new markets for them and their products. Accountability is one more of these key factors. Finally, we can quantify design as an economic activity with the introduction of the new NACE codes in Europe, 74.10, a breakthrough for the professionals. We still need future-proofing. Design as a driver for social innovation that improves the quality of all our lives. And positioning the work of organizations like BEDA or like all the different individual member associations in the different countries. They play a critical role for the recognition of the value of design in Europe. Just a couple of weeks ago, the second European design report was published by BEDA. I had the honor to publish it. And it states not only basic data of education, educational institutions, of members, of policies, but it also states that there are 11 countries with a national policy. I'm more or less finished. That's it. If I put examples, the design policy of Iceland, the Latvian design policy, and the one we got introduced yesterday, which hopefully becomes true in a couple of months. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Severin. Thank you. I have to be really strict because, you know, we want to have a good discussion, and the impulses are very important to dive later into really good structured talks. And now I have the honor to welcome the third speaker today, Michael Thompson. He is the founder and director of Design Connect. Design Connect is an independent design strategist and facilitator. Michael helps teams, businesses, organizations, even states, state organizations around the world to evolve their visions and strategies for growth and innovation with design. As a president of the Bureau of the European Design Associations, Michael initiated and led the high-level lobbying that persuaded the European Commission to include design in its innovation strategy in 2010. A former board member, as a former board member, he was responsible for the World Design Organization. Michael created and directed shaping the global design agenda. The first ever international conference on national design policy held as a part of Torino World Design Capital in 2008 and so on. So this is really one of the big players in this, very well connected to the design companies, to the design community, but also connected, really good connected to policy makers, to politicians, to the big companies all around the world. And I'm really happy that you could make it to come here and discuss with us. Please, the stage is yours.
Good morning, everyone. It's a great honor to be here today, and thank you, Eberhard, again for that overwhelming introduction. Very nice to be here. I'm going to try and talk for 9 minutes and 17 seconds, so let's see what happens. So it's a great honor to be here, and it's not the first time in Istanbul, it's my second time here, so I'm very excited to be here. And I thought I would take a few moments to talk about how can policy be better designed. And I'm going to talk about this probably from a slightly strange angle, in that I also work a great deal with companies and with design consultancies, helping them strategically to facilitate design change. And I thought what I would do would be maybe bring some observations from that world towards the policy discussion, towards policymakers who are not designers necessarily in the sense of a professional design consultancy. So how does design happen? And I thought I'd start with a photograph of civil servants designing. And here they are designing in a room. They're very senior civil servants. They're designing an innovation strategy. It's quite long into the process. They are from different government departments. It's the first time they've met together in the same room towards the end of the process. And I asked them, how do you guys work together? And they came up with these slides with words like lack of confidence, a blame culture, silo thinking, fear, risk aversion, so scared to take risks, tall poppy syndrome, you know poppy, the plant. So that idea is if your poppy is too tall, your head gets chopped off. So if you stand up and try and be ahead of the pack, fear of change and risk aversion, the glacial, very slow pace of change, and so on. So I thought that was really, really interesting for me. It made me think of this wonderful cartoon. You know, get back to that goddamn cubicle and start thinking outside the box. You know, somehow or other, there's a mismatch. You cannot ask policymakers to design change if you haven't helped them with design methods and design tools. So I thought I'd bring some observations from the design world. So this is just 3 or 4 little quick stories, but what I want you to notice is what the people are doing in the photographs and what's around them. So this was a broadcaster, Channel 4 in the UK. This was a year-long process to help them redefine their digital presence as a broadcaster. And what's interesting to me about this slide is who's in the slide. So yes, we've got designers. We've got an in-house designer from Channel 4, a TV mobile guy. We've got the marketing director, and we've got the director for digital media. He was driving the process. But look who else is there. The head of operations and the finance director. So I think from this slide, what I want to say is, when you are bringing your stakeholders for policy development together, try and get to the decision makers. Try and get as high up across the organizational structure as you can. If you look at the redesign of a train carriage interior, this is with Tangerine Design in London, for the Heathrow Express. It's only a 15-minute journey, but they were redesigning the first class of the carriage for the 2012 Olympics. And here we have two photographs. The top photograph is engineers thinking for the first time about the user journey. They were actually mapping the user journey. Now, on the Heathrow Express, it's only 15 minutes, but they'd never done that before. Their principal task is safety. But here they were being asked to think, yeah, but what does it feel like to be on the train? And where does the journey start? Etc. The bottom one is, so the top one is Heathrow to London, and the bottom one's London to Heathrow. So essentially, I'm showing you this slide. I'm sorry there are no ladies in this slide. It's an engineering culture, I'm afraid. Hopefully that is changing. We were rather disabled because of that. But having said that, this was the first time they'd actually thought about the user. And I'm saying to you, when you're developing policy, think about the users. And then we were helping them to strategize and to actually visualize their thinking and decision making as well. And I think visualizing decision making is really, really, really important, particularly where you're building maps of process and structures. Designing a city's wayfinding system, I've worked for many years with Mike Rowlandson at City ID. They're based in Bristol and New York. And we first worked together on the Bristol Legible City project. And I'm showing you this slide because that's Mike in the middle there facing us. And you can see that we had this, Mike and I invented what we called open space workshops. And we would actually take the design team inside the city council. This is in Newcastle, working together for a seamless integration across the region in terms of information design and wayfinding. And we actually built up over the period of a week the observations and the research and the insight, which would then allow us to make design decisions. And the key thing about this photograph is that the other people in the photograph are cabinet members from the city. And that means that they are not being handed a solution at the end of a process. They're actually involved in the process as it's building, and that's very powerful. And then we did some work in Moscow, where we're developing a wayfinding strategy for Moscow, built the mapping, and this was the first time there had ever been any user testing in the Russian transportation system, which was very much amusing for the people that were there. But that meant that we were able to then deliver a system that has been user-centric and well succeeded. Okay, a few more. I included this because Bath in England is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And they were looking to develop an information system, including bus shelters, for a heritage core, for a very sensitive urban site. And again, this was developed by actually bringing together multidisciplinary design teams. Look what's on the walls, look how people are working together. And I'm showing this slide because part of that process was actually having an exhibition to the public, and it was possible for the public to come to this exhibition and then express their views about what they thought should be happening in the city centre. And I think my message from that slide is, please make sure you involve your end users as best as you can and as widely as you can. Finally, I thought I'd do something a little less tangible, and basically this was designing a city transport strategy for a transportation strategy. And again, this was a process where you would actually bring a large number. This was a second meeting. There was a previous meeting of over 120 people. Bringing these people together to get as broad a view as possible of the different opportunities that the project allowed. And that also meant bringing sub-teams together, policemen, firemen, ambulance people, city councillors, many, many people that you might not expect to find in the room, bring them together and facilitate a process that creates change. So my concluding comments. And the first thing I want to say is policies are designed for people. And when policies are designed for people in the right way, having engaged the people in the process of the designing, then your chances of creating sustainable success at the lowest cost are maximized. And I want to finish with two questions. How do you work with your stakeholders? And what is your culture, your organizational culture for designing policy? And what can you do to change it for the better? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. 8 minutes. Yeah, perfect. We won. We won some time. I was wondering all these photos you showed us, and it's always what happened if the post-it would not have been invented. So thanks to the post-it guy. I don't remember who invented that, but I knew that. And what is the second thing? What I was thinking while you were presenting was that all the spaces, all the environment for these meetings are not really comfortable and not really designed and created for having this kind of different for running such a important process. It's all very uncomfortable. You don't know where to put the things, and I had that. So we have also to think about more, or that we need different spaces for these processes. But I want to step into with your question, or one of your questions. So, what are the obstacles of creating? We know now so many years, we have 20 years experience in different models of, at least in Europe, for design policies. What can a city like Istanbul learn from these processes? The European nations and cities and regions have learned by developing and implementing running design policies. What are the obstacles today? Michael, will you start? Yeah. No, it's a question to the whole panel, but I would like to give you the floor and start. It's on.
It's okay. I think there are paradoxes, and one of the paradoxes is, I mean, I've had the chance with others, it's not myself, but with others and through others, I've had the chance to work, as I say, in Moscow, recently in San Francisco, and other places where, even at the European Commission level, where paradoxically, although we would like to think it was different, unless you've got the guy at the top behind you, unless you've got buy-in at the top, then real change is not going to happen. If you have only buy-in at the top, real change is not going to happen. So you've got to have bottom-up change where you've engaged your users, but you also have to have that guy, that person at the top, because otherwise you get stuck in what's called a frozen middle, where the decision power gets stuck and you can't make the changes that you need to make. So I think for Istanbul, if I was thinking about Istanbul, I'm sorry I wasn't here yesterday, but I believe you had the mayor and the governor and everyone here, and that's a very good indication that there is an appetite for change and that those people might be prepared to accept changes that would be then coming from the processes that you're going to adopt. I think you also have to find a way to ensure that you try not to do everything all at once, and that the change that you deliver is based on insight, that you take time to stop and watch and think and think very, very carefully about what it is you want to change and how you're going to change it. Because if you try to do too much too soon, that will fail. If you try to do too little too soon, that will fail. So it's like this crazy balancing act of all of these different conflicting elements that you very carefully need to coordinate, curate, and conduct in order to be able to achieve change that you really want. But for me, I think for me, one of the key tools that design can bring is the way that people have conversations. If you can design the right conversations where people feel engaged and included and part of the end decisions, then I think that helps considerably.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eberhard.
Päivi?
Yes.
Thank you, Michael. There's very little I can add. I agree totally on what you say on both top-down and bottom-up approach. It's quicker when you start top down and bottom up at the same time, you are likely to meet somewhere in the middle sooner than if it was only top down or bottom up, certainly. And I couldn't agree more on trying to reach the top management or top layer of any organization. That's absolutely critical. But then there's maybe one third thing, which I was already thinking during your presentation. You showed all these rooms where these practices were taking place, and they were quite male-dominated, as you also mentioned. This brings to us in this room today. I'm very happy to see that the gender balance in the audience is existing. What I am not as happy to see that the gender balance here on the podium is not existing. So I think this is something we should keep in our mind as well. But diversity is a critical thing as well when we try to create policies, whether they are design policies or any policies, which should work to improve conditions, quality of life, etc., which design is after all the time. Diversity adds to the value. This is even true, you all know when we have these discussions around innovations, when innovations best happen. They happen when you have cross-disciplinary approach, you have people from different fields of expertise, but also if you have a diversity in gender, diversity in age. So if you really want to reach something that's feasible and something that can be having an impact in reality, remember diversity.
There's always a moment when, one moment is when a design policy is written, is done, then the action plan should follow. Go into life, go into down. So stop talking, start acting is the message then, and then sometimes the authors of the policy are not these guys who are the drivers of the action plan. I see this in many countries and many states. Luis, your example doing this vice versa, I've learned, or I think, is it the other way around? Do you think that this is more successful to do it? Could you hand over the microphone? To do it in that way, because what I see is that you just come up with good examples, create experience, and out of this experience it enters a sort of policy statement.
Yes, I think that maybe I'm not too very patient. So I think this is like a hands-on approach of doing things. I think I was talking a little bit before that. I think design, creativity, innovation, it always brings good things to the table. It should be used to improve people's life. I think when students give like their oath or they finish, they should promise not to design anything that does any harm. So what we do is good things, and then people notice. And another thing is that we were also saying that you are never a prophet in your own land. So you have to go and do many things outside, so it gets noticed in your country, which I don't know why. But I think also we do something wonderful that is cultural diplomacy. I think government official and the private sector and the universities are beginning to understand that with that you put your foot on the door, and then you get in there with everything else. So I think it's very nice what we do. And I think where there are no boundaries to what design, the way a designer thinks, there are no boundaries to where it can do some good or it can influence something. So that's, I think it's working the way I've been doing it. I hope it keeps working, but I think it's very important to do it also from down the bottom up.
Okay, next question goes to Boštjan and Piotr. The gap between the academic approach and the community approach, how do you think that could be bridged?
Yeah, I think that. Thank
Microphone,
you.
please.
Thank you,
Eberhard, to ask in this way. I think that as a designers, as a practitioners, are involved into these processes to create the atmosphere and also the method how to finish, how to run the project. So I think that the way also that the relation between the educational environment and practice environment is around about that. So with the prototyping, with these steps, how to organize everything it's I think the role number one to compare it and to merge these two important areas, and so I think that this is the way how to open it in mind. But yeah.
Piotr, the tool you developed, is this the right way?
I believe the research that we do is an applied research, and we try to use design process as a method for our research as well. So maybe for some hardcore academics, let's so to say, design is still not recognized as maybe so much academic methodology, but I think we're getting there. We are publishing more and more papers, and so to say, we use kind of action research methods, so that through doing, we're learning and we're constantly improving, and that's also the remit of the research, to learn from the process.
Yeah, Severin, we are facing in Austria. I know from your study you made a few years ago about the acceptance on design and how the economy looks on design, on the importance of design. And just this one figure, you know, we always talking about that balance, asking the firms and the companies, what do you think, how important is design? Can you tell a little bit about this and the problem of these two sides, the knowledge of that they know that design is important, but then they do not using design as a driver for development?
Yeah, of course. I mean, first of all, you mentioned that this was a study which was done only in Austria on the awareness topic. So I have no comparable figures with other countries. But we noticed, and I shortly also mentioned it in my talk, that the awareness within economy is rising. So people got aware that design is something which supports them, helps them to make more profit, to be more international, and so on and so forth, especially as most of our economies are in the small and medium-sized enterprises sector, because the big ones already use design anyhow, the big companies and the big industries. I think it's quite similar on the economic side, that we have to go for this approach we just mentioned a couple of times, top-down and bottom-up. Of course, especially in small companies where there's one head of the company, or perhaps it's family-owned and it's a family boss or father, whatever, behind that, he has to understand how to use design, what is design, how can it support him, help him, and then he has to kind of implement it from top down to all his workers and people working in his companies. But at the same time, of course, it's this bottom-up approach as well on this small-scale economic approach. Because if the smallest guy or the smallest person in the company, the worker, is not convinced, it doesn't work. Because he will be this kind of refusing obstacle in the approach. But I think things are improving there, because, I mean, that's a reality that we have these thousands of small and medium-sized enterprises, and they have to find their place on the market.
And the only thing they can create differentiation is by design.
And there's the other thing which I just mentioned shortly in my presentation is this cost and investment topic. Not only a few years ago, it was primarily seen as a cost. The owner of a company said, "Oh, design costs me a lot of money, and I'm not sure if this expense really is justified." And we have examples and proof here as well, more and more. And the owners of the company then see it more as an investment than as an expense, which is a necessity.
Yeah. Okay, I would like to open the floor now for the questions from the audience. Is there a question? Yes, please stand up, say who you are, and speak to the microphone.
Hello, my name is Ertan Toy. Thanks for the presentations, first of all. I am a board member of the Turkish Communication Designer Associations and assistant professor at Yıldız Technical University in the same field. I have two questions for you. When we start to make our design policy, where do we have to start? From the city or nationwide? This is the first question. And the second question is who has to lead the process? Associations, government, or policy makers of the city? These two questions is mine. Thank you.
First question I could answer. I think Istanbul is not a planet. It's not a city, not a state. No. Well, we have learned. I've heard yesterday that in the area, Istanbul area, this is 50% of all the economic power of Turkey. So it's more or less a national policy, but it should also have the view on the Istanbul development, maybe in the action plan that follows, or in a strategy that follows this policy from the state of Turkey to the city of Istanbul. But I would give the floor to the microphone to Michael, maybe, yes?
They're very perspicacious questions, and they're very difficult to answer. Or at least I would say it's very difficult to answer because I don't know enough about the context that you're operating in. I know I was involved for a while with a little bit of policy work in New York, and the idea was that there would be a policy delivered for New York City, which would then have an impact on New York State, and who knows, maybe that could help re-influence the White House to think about a design strategy for North America, which of course had previously been attempted in the past, but had been knocked aside because basically it was, well, this market forces, guys, if there's, government's not going to support this, let the market do it. And I think in that case, it started out well. It had a very mixed group of people together, like the chief architect for the city. It had somebody from the mayor's office. There was a good mix of people there, but in fact then there wasn't sufficient resources around that to allow that to grow. So nobody had owned not just the leadership process, but the budget. And the one thing we haven't mentioned yet is budget. And I think there are examples where policies get created, and if there's no budget, then it doesn't happen. So I think, as well as having the top down and the bottom up, you need to have resource and budget. I think the question there for Istanbul is, I think, if you start at the level of the bigger framework of reference of the nation, like what is our nation's future? What sort of a society do we want to be? How are we going to grow our economy in the way that we want to grow it? How do we relate to our international competitors in a globalizing world? Those are big questions. And I think if you can frame your policy in response to those larger questions, where it's not so easy to see what the answer should be, then I think you have a better chance of creating traction and longevity. The second question about who owns it is equally very, very context specific, because you would have explicit and implicit authority, which the practice of community would attribute to specific people in this context here. At the European level, it took 10 years for BEDA, which is an association of about 40 or 50 member associations of design, to find the way to learn the language of the European Commission so that they could then talk to the European Commission. Because it is not enough to go to somebody and say, design is the answer for everything. You know, listen to us, design is here, it's really important. That will not work for you. In fact, when we were talking with the European Commission, we very rarely used the word design. We talked a lot about design as a strategy to build better innovation. So that then leads me to the comment, sorry, I'm talking a bit long, but that then leads me to the comment that if you can tie the reason, the why, what is the why of your design strategy for Istanbul or for the nation, for Turkey? If you can tie the why to the larger existing objectives, political and economic objectives of the nation, then you have a better chance of connecting your language set to their language set, and then you can find a way to go forward. So thank you for those. Those are very perspicacious questions, and I'd like somebody else to offer a comment.
May
Okay.
Yeah, just to continue that a bit, in the case of Finland, what has happened and what happened was that we started almost 20 years ago, we started with a national policy. And that had, in a way, it had the ripple effect Louis was talking about in his speech. Cities and regions became interested. But this was because the national policy was already there. But I also have to say what Michael was saying, that this depends on the culture in the country a lot. So it would be very hard to say how Turkey should be doing, or how you should be doing in Istanbul or in Turkey. But I would tend to say that traditionally, what often happens and has happened is that the national policy came first, because it gives a backbone to the local level as well to act. And this is the rhetoric we use in BEDA, in the European design organization as well. We see European level of design policy having an impact or a possible impact in national level and also regional level. So one of the reasons why we feel a European level policy is needed is because it can support our member organizations in different countries in Europe. So from this point of view, it seems that the national level policy works starting from there, but it's so dependent on the culture that you would have to sort of think about that yourselves.
Now, Severin, and then Luis.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something because we spoke yesterday as you were a representative of one of the professional associations. I think a very, very important fact is that right at the beginning, all the different professional organizations and associations have the same opinion, speak the same language, including educational institutions. Because we had this discussion yesterday, art, applied art, design, architecture, and so on and so forth. I think as soon as there is, I don't know how many professional organizations of design are there in Turkey, but there are a couple of them in Istanbul, and there's graphic design and visual communication and industrial design and so on and so forth. I think on this level, the professional level, you have to speak the same language, you have to have the same aim, including education, design education in this part. Because if not, it's the easiest thing for politicians not to take you seriously, because then they say you don't speak with one voice. So make up your own business first and then come up to us again. So I think this is the basic level.
About what you mentioned, I think in the case of Istanbul, I'm not so familiar with it, but I think it's a little bit more similar as Mexico is. In Finland, they were so lucky to begin with the policy. And I think our approach should be probably the other way around. If people don't understand very well what design is all about, to make a policy, it's very difficult. I think it's not a money problem, it's a communications problem. For example, in Puebla, which is a different size, we are in our metro area about 3 million something people. For example, universities. We have, as I said, 150,000 university students. The university should be talking about the city of design. We were named in 2011 the capital city of innovation and design of our country by the federal government. And the problem is that just a small community knows about it. We have even been like in Dundee, which is a small city in Scotland, and you ask the taxi driver or nobody knows they are a city of design. I think everybody should be talking about it. I always say that the more you talk about it, if you talk and talk about it, your wish comes true. All these thousands of creative people that are hiding in their little cave somewhere, when they listen and when they know that the design is all around here and you talk about it and you are proud of it, they would come out of those little caves because their voice is going to be heard. And I think that would be the way to begin of the making of a design policy. I think probably it's the other way around. In Istanbul, you have a big challenge. It's like Mexico City with their 22 million. It's a very big critical mass. To see the effect of something like a city of design in some big thing is more difficult than in a small place, but it can be done, and you have to get as many allies as you can. I mean, universities should be the first ones. For example, I think if people all around know that Istanbul is a city of design and they want to study design, they should be in Istanbul, the studying. They would be the first ones to be favored with something like that. Well, it would be the chambers. That's probably one of the things that was mentioned here about design. We are everywhere. So it's so difficult to differentiate that something special because we are in all walks of life, everywhere, in commerce. Sometimes design is like an orphan that doesn't know if it belongs to culture or to economic development, but it really belongs to everywhere. So you got to get as many allies as you can.
Short.
Yeah, of course, I will be a bit boring. I couldn't agree more with you. And of course, having the policy on a national level helps, but there's no reason why you shouldn't start on a city level or regional level, and maybe lead by example to the central government. And in terms of who should start, I think we've also said that it's important to really map all your actors and all your stakeholders and take them all on that journey. And as soon as you build the critical mass for the policy, I think you will manage to have government on board as well. And one more thing, and about funding, because you need to be also smart about the finance, because there is a lot of funds already available. If you look perhaps in many support programs, there are funds for design. You just need to map them and be smart about them and how you can use them.
Thank you. Yes,
Yeah,
sure.
Maybe from my perspective, or from the perspective of this small society like Slovenia is, but it's not important where they start. When you start to create the level of design policy management and so on, it's also the university can be example like ours, which is among 50,000 students in this country, small country. It's enough. It's a good can be a good example how to create the relations of or approach of the design into the different structures. Or you can manage the students, or management of the university, or how can you merge this, and so that will be also the reason that's how they start. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We're coming to the final question, the final round on this, and. You see, this is the lady standing next to me. I have to speed now. Final question, short answer, please, to you, starting with Luis. What do you think is the worst case, the big mistakes we have to avoid, or your bodies have to avoid? If they start with a design policy process, developing process?
Well, I think, as I said, you need as many accomplices as you can. Sometimes the change of government, or the government officials, or the people that is following that puts in risk all the proceedings and everything that's going on. I think it's very important that you get as many people from society, university, NGOs, whatever you can, to make that stronger and stronger every time, so it can not depend on the changes of administrations. I think that's probably the biggest risk. Suddenly everything goes very well, but if they get distracted with something else because they're very busy all the time, you probably end up at the first stage again. So that's very important to take in account, I think.
Botas. We had two microphones. Where did you? Okay.
I think that you need, of course, you need the courage, you need the patience to do that, and of course a lot of budget around. Okay, that's the way how to put it.
Severin.
Very short answer. We heard today already, policies are made for people. You should really involve all stakeholders from the beginning on. I think one of the big mistakes would be not to include everybody.
Piotr.
Again, I agree. I truly believe in stakeholder-led design policies. As long as everyone has some interest, they're gonna make it happen. But also maybe another mistake of design policies is being maybe too broad and have put some wishful thinking slogans that are not meaning really anything.
They're
Need
not
to be concrete, concise, measurable.
Very nice words, not grounded. Yeah. Michael.
Yeah, I think, thanks, Piotr. I think I was thinking you have to be very, very clear about the why. Why are we doing this? And what are the benefits? If you can't say what the benefits are going to be, then your target audiences are not going to be able to come with you. And just building on what Piotr said, I think your benefits can be very focused. They need to be very, very focused so that people can understand that when small success happens, success breeds success, and that's how you grow. So don't start too big either.
This is Päivi. Let me add one thing here. Yes, and what we always talking about, how can we measure the value of design? Yeah, how can we? And this is very important. The measurement of this and gives us reason, and it gives us also the
making easier as well. Persistence is absolutely crucial. With policy work, there are no sort of short-term wins. It's a long-term effort, and you have to be very patient and prepared to accept that politicians will change and decision-making from that respect will change. But may I ask a question from the audience? Because what I would really want to know is where you come from. Hands raised. How many of you are from the design community? How many of you are designers? Okay, maybe a bit less than half. How many of you come from administration, from city administration? Very few. How many of you come from research? More than from administration. And I'm wondering what the rest of you might be. University? Okay, yes, quite a few from university. So actually, this is a mix of stakeholders that already would be needed to go forward with planning a design policy. We are probably missing some people. We are missing the highest political level, etc. But the work will, okay, there's even that here. So, but if you understand what I'm sort of striving after, diversity, this is a starting point. So you all should be involved.
So thank you very much. It was a big honor to have you here, listening about design policy, developing a policy about the how and the why we were talking about yesterday and today. I have to say thank you. We have another session, a closed session in the afternoon. And now, please give the speakers the applause.
Thank you. We thank all our guest speakers for their detailed explanations. We really appreciate it. Could you please stay on the stage for the plaque? Değerli misafirler, oturum başkanımız ve konuşmacılarımıza paylaştıkları bilgiler için teşekkür eder. Değerli konuşmacılarımıza plaketlerini takdim etmek üzere İstanbul Büyükşehir Belediyesi Kentsel Tasarım Müdürü Sayın Ömer Turan'ı sahneye davet ediyorum.